Keanu Reeves exposes a snobby flight attendant's shocking behavior on a luxury flight. What happens next will leave you speechless. Watch to see justice served in first class. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe for more. Check out our other videos for more amazing content, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. The golden sunset bathed the runway in warm hues as the most exclusive passengers boarded Flight 719. First-class cabins designed like private lounges, leather seats with gold-accented trim, and flight attendants trained to cater only to the wealthiest travelers. This was not just any flight, it was a luxury experience reserved for the elite of the elite. Among them was Jennifer Lawrence, dressed in a casual yet elegant beige sweater, fitted jeans, and white sneakers. She carried a simple leather backpack slung over one shoulder, exuding an effortless grace that needed no flashy accessories. No security detail, no designer luggage, just a woman looking forward to a quiet flight. Standing near the entrance of the business class cabin was William Radcliffe III, a hedge fund billionaire in his late 50s, and his wife Genevieve, a former model draped in diamonds, wrapped in a custom-tailored Chanel coat. Their presence alone commanded attention. They were used to being treated like royalty, and they expected nothing less. As Jennifer approached her seat, a sharply dressed flight attendant, Richard, tall and exuding arrogance, intercepted her with a condescending smile. His eyes flickered to her simple outfit, his tone dripping with fake politeness. "Madam, you may have taken a wrong turn. Economy is further back," Richard said, gesturing toward the rear of the plane. Jennifer blinked, momentarily confused. "Excuse me?" Richard's smirk grew. "Our first-class cabins are reserved for a select clientele. Perhaps I can direct you to a more suitable section?" A soft chuckle came from behind her. Genevieve Radcliffe, sipping a glass of pre-flight champagne, smirked over the rim. "Oh, Richard, don't be too harsh. Maybe she saved up for this ticket. It's quite the upgrade from coach, isn't it, dear?" Jennifer exhaled slowly, recognizing the moment for what it was. She had been here before, not in this exact cabin, but in this exact situation. The kind where people decided who you were based on what you wore rather than who you actually were. She could have argued, she could have shown her boarding pass and put the flight attendant in his place. But she didn't. Instead, she simply gave a polite nod and took a step toward her seat. And that's when Richard made his biggest mistake. "I mean," he added with a laugh, "if you'd like, I can check if we have a special discount meal for budget travelers." A ripple of laughter spread through the cabin. Several wealthy passengers chuckled softly, amused by the spectacle. Jennifer lowered her eyes briefly, her fingers tightening around the strap of her backpack. What none of them noticed was the man sitting quietly in seat 1A. A man in a simple black leather jacket, his face partially hidden behind the airline menu. Keanu Reeves. His glass of wine remained untouched, his expression unreadable. Then, in a deep, calm voice, he spoke. "That's enough." Silence. The laughter died instantly. The chuckles vanished into thin air. Genevieve's smirk faded. The passengers turned toward the voice, realization dawning on their faces. That voice was unmistakable. That presence was undeniable. Richard, the flight attendant, stiffened. His confidence shattered in an instant. Keanu slowly folded the menu, setting it down with precise calmness. He leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes locking onto Richard's. "Do you know who you're talking to?" The flight attendant swallowed, his face paled. His eyes darted nervously to Jennifer, then back to Keanu. "You don't," Keanu interrupted, his voice steady, "and that's exactly the problem." The air in the cabin grew thick with tension. The once arrogant passengers suddenly shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Everyone knew Keanu Reeves was involved now, and nobody wanted to be on the wrong side of Keanu Reeves. Richard opened his mouth, but no words came out. Genevieve gripped her champagne flute, suddenly looking less amused. Keanu tilted his head slightly. "What was it you said about budget travelers?" Richard swallowed hard, his once superior attitude crumbling. The entire plane was watching now. What would happen next would leave everyone speechless. The cabin remained silent, thick with tension. The once lavish hum of hushed conversations had evaporated, replaced by a deadly stillness. Flight attendant Richard, the man who had smugly dismissed Jennifer Lawrence just moments ago, now stood frozen under the weight of Keanu Reeves' unflinching gaze. Passengers shifted in their plush Italian leather seats, adjusting their silk scarves, some avoiding eye contact while others barely concealed their curiosity. Genevieve Radcliffe, the former supermodel draped in diamonds and arrogance, clutched her custom Hermes clutch, her lips pursed in discomfort. William Radcliffe III, her billionaire husband, lowered his gold-rimmed whiskey glass, watching the scene unfold with a mix of amusement and unease. Keanu remained standing, his presence alone commanding absolute attention. "You serve luxury every day, don't you?" His voice was measured, calm, yet it carried a powerful weight that made Richard swallow hard. The flight attendant hesitated, glancing at Jennifer, then back at Keanu. Yes, sir," he stammered. Keanu tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "And yet, you decided she didn't belong here." A collective hush fell over the business class cabin. The realization hit Richard like a tidal wave. His own words, the same dismissive tone he had used on Jennifer, now thrown back at him with devastating precision. Jennifer sat quietly, her fingers lightly grazing the polished wood armrest of her seat. She had been here before, judged, underestimated, looked down upon, simply for choosing comfort over spectacle. She could have spoken up for herself, but Keanu wasn't done. He took a slow step forward, his dark eyes locked onto Richard's. "Tell me," he said, his voice dangerously smooth, "what's the most expensive meal on this flight?" Richard blinked. Sir?" Keanu's stare remained unwavering. "The most premium dish you serve. What is it?" The flight attendant's throat tightened. "That would be the imperial caviar platter, sir," he replied shakily. "It's $3,800. A murmur rippled through the cabin. Even the wealthiest guests leaned in, intrigued. Some had ordered that exact dish before, as a status symbol rather than a meal. Keanu nodded. "Good. Bring 2. Richard's eyes widened. "Sir, that's 2, Keanu repeated, his voice steady as steel. "1 for me, and 1 for her." Gasps, the sound of a diamond bracelet clinking against a champagne flute. Genevieve Radcliffe visibly stiffened. Jennifer, however, remained still, a small, knowing smile tugging at her lips. She had known Keanu for years. This wasn't about money. It was about sending a message. Richard scribbled the order with shaking hands before rushing toward the galley. His footsteps echoed unnaturally loud in the stunned silence of the cabin. When he returned minutes later, the tray trembled in his grip. 2 plates, each adorned with a silver cloche, containing the most expensive dish on the flight. Keanu, however, didn't take his seat. Instead, he pulled out a wow chair. Not for himself. For Richard. "Sit." The flight attendant's breath hitched. Passengers gawked. Genevieve let out a soft, scandalized gasp. William adjusted his gold Rolex, watching intently. Sir, Richard's voice cracked. "I can't sit at the passenger's table." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" Richard's pulse raced. "Because it's not meant for me." Keanu's lips curled into a knowing smirk. "Exactly." The words hung in the air like a final verdict. The realization hit Richard like a sledgehammer. Just moments ago, he had denied Jennifer the same privilege, deciding she didn't belong. Now, he was the one suddenly out of place. The heat from the cabin lights pressed down on him. The expensive perfume of the guests felt suffocating. For the first time, he tasted his own arrogance, and it was bitter. Keanu gestured to the untouched dish in front of Richard. "Eat." The flight attendant's hand shook. "See, sir, I don't deserve this." Keanu leaned in slightly, his voice low, deliberate. "And yet, you decided she didn't deserve it either." The air in the cabin was thick with suspense. The other passengers, once entertained spectators, were now silent witnesses to a moment far greater than themselves. Jennifer finally spoke, her voice calm, unwavering. "Would you have treated me differently if you had known who I was?" Richard's blood ran cold. The murmurs escalated. A passenger a few rows back widened his eyes, whispering something to his companion. Then it began. The realization spread like wildfire. A businessman pulled out his phone, his mouth dropping open. "Wait a minute. Is that Jennifer Lawrence?" Another guest gasped audibly. "The Oscar-winning actress?" The wave of recognition rushed through the cabin. The woman Richard had dismissed as not belonging was suddenly the most important person in the room. Genevieve's face turned ghostly white. William cleared his throat, suddenly very interested in the ice cubes swirling in his whiskey glass. Jennifer met Richard's shocked gaze. "But that's the thing, isn't it?" she said softly. "It shouldn't matter who I am." The room fell completely silent. Jennifer stood up, her posture graceful yet commanding. "It's not about who someone is," she continued. "It's about how you treat people when you think they're nobody." A single powerful truth that cut deeper than any insult. Keanu watched Jennifer with quiet admiration, then turned back to Richard. "You should be thankful for this lesson." He glanced at the other passengers. "Not everyone gets a second chance." And just like that, Jennifer and Keanu turned and walked toward the front of the cabin, leaving behind a room full of stunned, regretful faces. Richard remained frozen in his seat, staring at the untouched $3,800 dish in front of him, his hands trembling. He hadn't just lost face. He had lost something much greater, his dignity. The question remained, would he learn from this moment, or would his pride ruin him forever? The flight attendant Richard's hands trembled as he stood motionless, staring at the two lavish dishes now placed on the mahogany-trimmed tray table in front of him. The imperial caviar platter, a $3,800 delicacy, shimmered under the cabin lights, served on gold-rimmed porcelain plates, accompanied by crystal stemware filled with 200-year-old cognac. The business-class passengers, the same ones who had mocked Jennifer Lawrence moments ago, now watched in stunned silence. Keanu Reeves, still seated with effortless composure, pushed one dish toward Jennifer. The other he slid in front of Richard. "Eat," Keanu commanded, his voice eerily calm. Richard's face paled. He stiffened, glancing toward Genevieve Radcliffe, who was clutching the diamond-studded handle of her billionaire's edition Chanel purse as if holding on to dear life. William Radcliffe III, her husband, swirled his 25-year Macallan Scotch, watching with a mix of unease and curiosity. The tension was suffocating. "See, sir, Richard stammered. "Eat," Keanu repeated, his voice firmer this time. Richard swallowed, his fingers shaking as he picked up the silver-plated spoon. He dipped it into the exquisite black caviar, the most luxurious dish on the flight, a meal he had served to countless elites, but never dared dream of tasting himself. He hesitated. I don't deserve this." Keanu leaned in, his dark eyes piercing through him. "And yet, you decided she didn't deserve it either." A sharp inhale rippled through the cabin. Genevieve crossed her arms, clearly uncomfortable. William let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. Well, well, this is quite the performance," he murmured, his voice laced with sarcasm. Keanu tilted his head slightly, unbothered. You think this is a performance? Genevieve scoffed. Come on, Mr. Reeves, we both know how this works. Some people simply don't belong in first class. Keanu's expression remained unreadable. And what exactly makes someone belong, Genevieve? She hesitated. Well, class, wealth, status, presentation. Jennifer, silent until now, finally spoke. Ah, so it's about appearances then? Genevieve flushed, her posture stiffening. It's about standards. Jennifer gave a small, knowing smile. Funny. I thought it was about character. Silence. Thick. Unbearable. Richard's throat tightened. He finally understood. His mistake was far greater than insulting a random passenger. He had humiliated Jennifer Lawrence, one of the most celebrated actresses in the world. And now, the cabin knew it. A man in an Armani suit across the aisle squinted at his phone, then gasped. Holy sh! That's Jennifer Lawrence. A woman in pearls turned to her husband. The Hunger Games star. Oh my God. Suddenly whispers exploded throughout the cabin. That's really her. I love her movies. Wait, he insulted Jennifer Lawrence? What an idiot. Richard's entire body went cold. The same passengers who had laughed at Jennifer earlier now leaned forward, eyes filled with shock and regret. Genevieve's smirk vanished. Even William shifted uncomfortably, adjusting his solid gold cufflinks. Jennifer turned back to Richard, her blue eyes steady. Would you have treated me differently if you had known who I was? The words landed like a thunderclap. Richard's jaw clenched. He didn't answer, because they all knew the truth. He had judged her on sight, because she wore a hoodie instead of designer brands, because she didn't flaunt her wealth, and now he was paying the price for that judgment. Keanu sighed, leaning back. But that's the thing, isn't it? His voice was smooth but sharp, cutting through Richard's soul. It shouldn't matter who she is. A long, heavy silence. Jennifer pushed her untouched plate forward and stood. She adjusted her hoodie, her expression unreadable. Then she delivered the final blow. It's not about who someone is. She let the words sink in. It's about how you treat people when you think they're nobody. The cabin went deathly silent. Then, without another word, she walked away. Keanu watched her go, his expression thoughtful. Then he turned back to Richard. You should be grateful for this lesson, Keanu murmured. Not everyone gets a second chance. And with that, he followed Jennifer down the aisle, leaving behind a room full of silent, regretful people. The aftermath. Richard collapsed into the nearest seat, his head spinning. Genevieve glanced down at her untouched champagne, suddenly feeling exposed. William cleared his throat, muttering, Well, that was unexpected. The passengers sat in stunned silence, processing what they had just witnessed. And Richard? He had gone from feeling untouchable to the most embarrassed man on the plane. But the real question lingered. Would he change? As the plane continued toward its destination, one thing was clear. No one in that cabin would ever forget the day they witnessed a true lesson in class. The story underscores the importance of treating everyone with respect, regardless of appearances or assumptions. It teaches that true class isn't defined by wealth, status, or outward presentation, but by how we treat those we perceive as nobody. Judging others based on superficial factors can lead to missed opportunities for connection and growth. In today's world, where inequality and biases persist, this narrative reminds us to approach others with humility and empathy. Respect is a universal value. It costs nothing, yet yields immense rewards. By fostering kindness and openness, we create environments where dignity thrives, leaving lasting impressions far greater than material wealth ever could. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe True Tapes channel, because tomorrow we have another special story for you.